This is a poem by Owen Wilson, who is famous for his poetry of the First World War, and how it connects to power and conflict is it's it's a poem from the perspective of soldiers in the trenches in World War I, and it's at night, and they're afraid of a coming attack. Afraid of attack, and it's ironic because its nature is the enemy, specifically the cold, so that connects to poems like Storm on the Island, and they imagine returning home, but everything's closed to them, so the past and home is lost to them, and then in the end they meditate and think about their deaths. Our brains ache. That pain opens up the poem. In the merciless, iced east winds. So each of those are adjectives that emphasize the brutality of just the wind. And then the metaphor is of the wind itself attacking, slicing, cutting into the speaker and all of the soldiers' hour. Wearied we keep awake because the night is silent. This is an odd line, and we'll see later in line 5, worried by the silence. Silence maybe is a good thing, but here there's a sense of worry and foreboding. Something bad's going to happen. Oops, sense of worry. And the ellipses help give that sense of somebody waiting for something to happen. But nothing is. Low, drooping flares confuse our memory of the salient. Worried by silence. Sentries whisper, curious, nervous, but nothing happens. So there's a tension that something will happen, but nothing. Since nothing's actually happening, it creates more fear, more worry of what's to come. Watching, we hear the mad gusts tugging at the wire. So this is barbed wire, and the wind is continues to be personified, because here it's tugging at this barbed wire, and that sound again creates that tension, that worry, like the simile here, like twitching agonies of men among its brambles. So the simile is comparing the wind to men caught up in the wire itself, which suggests death. But there's a further metaphor, brambles, as if it's a natural part of the environment, like the hedges, as if men are caught in hedges, but it's not hedges, it's wire, and it's a twitching agony, which is a brutal image of being alive and suffering, and the muscle contracting, continually contracting and releasing as a way of punishment and torture. And that's what's in the speaker's mind as just hearing the wind on the wire. In the background, there's the flickering of the gunnery of guns, just rumbling, just at a real distance, as if, like the whispers in the previous stanza, a dull rumor of some other war. What are we doing here? Here's a rhetorical question that shows again confusion and a lack of hope. A questioning of what's actually the purpose of why this suffering. The poignant misery of dawn begins to grow. So dawn is usually something of hope, but here it's misery. And it's poignant, meaning it's accurate, it's correct, it's painfully sad because of their suffering. So hope Dawn is usually this wonderful warm time, but no, here it's completely brutal and miserable. The natural pain of it starts to really be emphasized here. War lasts, rain soaks, clouds stay. All we know is misery. And the natural imagery emphasizes the pain, the cold, the suffering, the agony, if you will, of these soldiers. Dawn massing in the east. The metaphor is of war. Her melancholy, her sad army. Dawn gathers together for the sun to rise. The metaphor is of an army, but a really sad army, attacking the grayness of the night. But this grandiose image leads us to, but nothing happens. Again, inertia, paralysis. There's a feeling of death completely, and utter sadness. Sudden successive flights of bullets streak the silence. The sibilance is striking. All those S sounds, they really give that sense of the sudden eruption of the bullets. Less deadly than the air that shudders black with snow. Oh, air, cold air, worse than bullets. So what we get is the sense that nature is actually even worse than warfare. So now we see exposure in the title to be both an idea that exposure as in open to attack, but exposure as in exposed to the elements of nature. With sidelong flowing flakes that flock, pause, and renew, we watch them wandering up and down the wind's nonchalance. But nothing happens. Here again we get this, the snow is arriving, and it's personified walking in a really in a way that nothing bothers it. And again, even though we have beautiful, grandiose, poetic imagery, it's undercut immediately with the idea that nothing's actually happening here. Pale flakes with fingering stealth come feeling for our faces. So the snow, again personified to touch and almost attack the soldiers. They cringe in holes. They're like zombies. They are afraid. They want to hide. And they seek these ditches, which ironically are even grassier than the deadness outside, and they sleep littered with blossoms trickling where the blackbird fusses. But towards the end of each stanza, we get a really poetic image that contrasts with the misery, sadness, and sense of defeat. Is that why we're dying? For this nothingness? Slowly our ghosts drag home. Now here we get a dream. And our ghosts, meaning our souls, our imaginations, they drag themselves home. So even when you're fantasizing about home, it's not that great a thing. They take a short, brief look at the sunk fires glazed with crusted dark red jewels. That's the fantasy of warmth, of coals and of the fire. When you're freezing, of course, that's what you'd think of. Crickets jingle there, so you get the pastoral imagery of being relaxed and hearing the insects. And the mice are having a party because the house is actually theirs. We're just ghosts visiting. It's an empty house. And for hours, I think only for a brief time the mice rejoice, because when the food's gone, that's it for them. Shutters and doors all closed. On us, the doors are closed. Here we get the real sense of backs turned on the soldiers, and they turn back to our dying. From the fantasy back to reality. Everything is pulling them out of this dream, and they're back into this living death. Since we believe not otherwise can kind fires burn, nor ever suns smile true on child or field or fruit. For God's invincible spring our love is made afraid. Therefore not loath we lie out here. Therefore we're born, for love of God seems dying. Here we might get the feeling that there's hope or reason to fighting. Oh, we fight because it's for this reason that we fight. It's God's invincible spring. We're waiting for it, and we have fear of God, so that's why we suffer, and we're enduring this. We were born for this reason. For love of God seems dying. So it may feel like suffering, but here we have the reason. It's for God. It's for belief. And this stanza, I think we have to consider: is this irony? Is he being sarcastic? Well, let's see. Really, in the last stanza. Tonight, this frost will fasten on the mud and us. I love that verb. Fasten really means to be connected. So you get the sense that the cold is permanent. Shriveling, the imagery. Puckering. The imagery is, what does the cold do? It shreds up the flesh. It puckers. It indents the forehead. The burying party picks and shovels in shaking grasp. Pause over half-known faces. So the burying party are the people who bury the dead from the last day. And they pause for a second because there's some people that they know. All their eyes are eyes. Whose eyes? Is it the dead's? It seems like they are. They become part of nature. And again, even though you've seen someone you know, or you kind of knew, dead, and you're making a grave for him, that might be a monumental thing, but since it happens every day, nothing happens. So we see that there's a kind of sense, really, of an ironic reasoning here. Like in Charge of the Light Brigade, ours is not to question why. Ours is to just do and die, just to follow orders and be cannon fodder. If that's the reason, well, that's not enough. And Wilfred Owen is showing his anger, his hopelessness, his despair, and he expresses that mostly through a description of nature, which turns the major device in the poem, pathetic fallacy, the use of nature to express the speaker's feeling.